We have a couple of presenters here who will be talking to us about bringing services in-house and what that means for municipalities. So pretty interesting session here. We're excited to have our speakers. So two folks, Caroline Partridge is the finance director and CFO of West Whiteland Township here in PA. She has a wealth of experience in municipal finance and has been a longstanding member of the West Whiteland team and of course, user of the Synario platform. And Pam Girlbear is the township manager for West Whiteland. She's worked for three second-class townships, including Upper Marion Township, Montgomery Township, and most recently, of course, West Whiteland. A little fun fact, all three of those municipalities share some similarities, including they're all located in southeastern Pennsylvania. They're all retail, commercial, and transportation hubs. They boast AAA credit ratings. 3 out of the 11 municipalities in the state of Pennsylvania with such a rating. And of course, they're all experiencing extreme residential growth and development. And of course, there is one more similarity here in that Pam has worked with each of them. So we're really excited to have the both of them speak on, again, this topic of bringing services in-house, what it means for the township, how they're modeling it, and of course, how Synario plays a part in that. So with that, Caroline, Pam, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. I saw that you were able to share your screen. So if you want to go ahead and take it over from here, we can go ahead and get started.
Sure, thank you. Looking forward to this presentation. I know we're going to probably be a little bit different than our previous presenters. We are a smaller municipality organization, and so we not only start the projects and now analyze them, and we see them all the way to fruition. So a little bit different role than some of our other presenters today, but should be hopefully helpful to everybody. So we'll dive right in. We've been working with Synario for a number of years, although Caroline and I have spent some time in the program. We find it super useful. Oyemi, just a shout out to her, has been instrumental and as a liaison and consultant. So she's really been the backbone to us being able to utilize the program. This year, our board, we have 3 elected board members, and they have wanted us to take a look at our trash and recycling program and how we collect it. Many of you might be saying, what does that have to do with Synario? But it does. Do we bring it in-house or do we continue to outsource the service to others? The industry, trash and recycling, has quadrupled in price. We typically go out for bid on a 5-year contract. We're coming to the end of a 5-year contract next year. And so prices have gone anywhere from 30 to 70% above present contract prices. So that is what we're going to focus on today. But just a few things about West Whiteland. We're located approximately 30 miles outside of Philly at the center. We're the center of Chester County, surrounding the Exton Crossroads of Route 30 and Route 100. We have almost 20,000 residents, and during the day we climb to about 26,000 due to the retail industry and commercial industry in the township here. We're about 13 square miles. Our team manages about 70 miles of township-owned roads and over 100 miles of sanitary sewer lines, along with 12 parks. And we have an annual budget of
$16 million for the general fund. Some more facts about West Whiteland. We have a transportation mix of redevelopment around our center of the township. We call it the Exton Crossroads. In the past few years, with the development boom, we've seen a growth in residential along with commercial aspects. Basically, our mission, as most municipalities and local government, provide service to the residents at a reasonable cost, keep the quality high, keep the costs as low as possible, and without interfering in the level of service, mainly safety, economic, and sustainability. Yes, Moody's Township received a AAA bond rating earlier, about 2016. They've been able to hold that. Our reserves are quite substantial. And as with most smaller municipalities, townships save and then complete major projects and deplete fund balance, and then the cycle continues again. West Whiteland is in a good place. It's the center of Chester County, economically, commercially, and it's a place where people want to live.
So just to give you a few facts behind our trash and recycling program, so the numbers make sense later. Back in the 90s, the township implemented a pay-as-you-throw program. So it's really paying for what you use. So it's called the bag system, where all folks pay $89 across the board as a base pay. And then they purchase plastic bags, trash bags, to put all of their trash in. And so the average resident uses approximately one bag per week, and was an average of about 219 a year. Benefits of the program was encouraging recycling, and basically people pay for what they are using. So we've gone out a few times. We're facing haulers that don't want to collect bags. They just want to use the tote system. So we have a community that is, half of them are devoted to the bag system because it's low cost, and others want the convenience of rolling that tote to the curbside, and they don't care how much they pay. Typically, tote systems and converting the whole program will double the cost for most residents. So we turn to, these are just a little bit about the surveys we've done with the community to get their feedback on the pay-as-you-throw program. And then here are our challenges. Haulers are reluctant to bid the service due to the bag system, switching from the bags to all totes, increased costs, poor customer service from the hauler, and increased staff time on an outsourced service. So all of those challenges have led us to exploring an in-house system versus continuing to outsource the services. So just the facts behind it, we're currently in our 4th year of a 5-year contract with our current hauler. We did go out to bid earlier this year. The cost did come back at 70% higher, as we thought they would. The other option is exploring bringing it in-house and providing all the equipment, labor necessary to accomplish this. We're continuing to examine both options still, with the potential of going out to bid early in 25, at the same time applying for grants and so forth to help fund an in-house scenario. So the goals of the collection service: secure and trash and recycling program that provides excellent service, keeps the costs down, meets our sustainability goals, increase the grant funding, and to keep the trash out of the landfill, so saving space there. This is where Synario has come in. So we started working with LEME probably a year ago on this model.
When pressed with the issue that we had, the outsourced trash and recycle pickup, customer service was poor, costs are rising considerably. And just as an aside, the trash and recycling program is not part of the general fund. It is in a separate fund itself. It's self-sustaining. It is a proprietary fund for the government. And in short, although it's not required to pass a balanced budget, it is wise to do so. But we also knew with the rising costs of the outsourcing, it would mean our revenue coming in, meaning our fees to the residents and the pay per bag, were not meeting the expenses going out. So apart from the poor service, we know that there's a cost increase to the residents. We turn to Synario, help in building a model that we can present to the public that not only includes the current costs that the fund has, namely it costs money to take your trash to any particular place. We have no people costs currently. It is just the cost to haul the trash and for the outsourcing. And of course, recycling at one time there was a small revenue stream that has switched in the last couple of years. It costs money to have your recycling hauled away. So in turning to Synario, we needed help in building the people costs and the capital costs. And Oliemi was very instrumental in helping us build this model so that we can project not only current costs, but for the next 10 years. We know that we're going to have to take a loan. Currently, the fund has no reserves. So our first endeavor is, there's a loan. Does the township make a loan to the business, or do we go out for a loan? Probably cheaper for the township to float the loan. And then, of course, all the costs that are not currently part of the program, people generally, capital, were built into this model. And I think in front of you that this is our first run draft through it. And hopefully it's the first run because there is a deficit. And so this is a work in progress. As Pam said, we still have another year within our current contract. We still can go out for bid, tweak the bid proposal a bit, see if more haulers will bid. The goal of our endeavor here is not necessarily to start a new business, but to provide the residents with the least cost service of removing their trash and recycling. And I will tell you that we did take the model, and then if you go to the spreadsheet, we took the model. We had some growth patterns within and conservative growth patterns within some of the costs. But I was able to take the model, and we know our costs, we know our expenses, we know our revenue. We just have to collect the revenue to cover the costs. So this is our first draft to present to the elected officials on what an annual cost will mean per resident based on having the expenses of a staff, capital costs, and all the other expenses that go with having people costs. There's training, there is CDL license that need to be kept up. There's insurance costs. Now we have some liability with the trucks on the road. What type of trucks will we purchase?
I would say one of the key takeaways from doing the scenario modeling building was that the cost of the in-house services versus outsourcing are relatively the same. Definitely different approaches, but that's where we've landed on that. The cost of doing business, whether internal or external, was the same. So it really helped us navigate both options, and now it's up to the board to select the path forward. which they plan on doing the end of this month. And that's kind of it in a nutshell, what we did with our scenario modeling. Questions, comments? Yemi, if you have anything you want to add.
Yeah,
Sure.
open the floor to you, Yemi, if you have anything you'd like to add on that front.
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the kind words, Pam and Caroline. It's been good working with you over the last couple of years. So as the team noted, they're looking to bring potentially the solid waste in-house. And so just they've walked through different ways in which they've done that. If I can just quickly share my screen with you all, I'll just lightly cover over where in the model they've done that. They lightly showed you some things as well. So this is just a high-level overview of what the work product was in terms of getting that done in the model. So I'll just go 2 slides down. So if we start with this large table down here, I won't go through all of it. These are some of the things likely that Caroline was highlighting in the other file, where they went through and they thought through all of the different aspects of new expenses or existing expenses and how those would change, and map that out and how that's going to change over time. So these would be all of those new costs that weren't a part of their current budget in the solid waste fund. And then they also took a look at existing items where you can see up here, we have a baseline and then there's an alternative here where the base would have been the normal budget. And then we have how things are going to grow differently from that. So are they going to have more revenues due to charging more for certain things? And you can see the assumptions that were made for that. So these 2 things coupled together allowed for them to ultimately put together some scenarios here. So you can see some different scenarios we have up top here, mainly a base, and then an in-house version, which allowed them to do the incremental analysis to understand what the implications of doing the solid waste in-house solid waste would be and what it would be if they did not. And so version changes over time, but they were able to come in and see, all right, in the first versions of the project, solid waste is going to cost more. Definitely, maybe on the front end it will because of the purchases of new capital and other items that wouldn't have been there before, but then they'll also get the cost savings, with contracted services and et cetera. And then they could do the incremental analysis of what gets added on. So just at a high level, that's the way that we approached it, is thinking through what are all of the new effects aside from just the capital purchases of like new trucks and et cetera that are going to be needed, and then making decisions on how to be able to raise new revenues or et cetera that the team has spoken about. But I think that's about it on my end.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Yemi. Thank you, Pam and Caroline. Much appreciated. Got a few questions for you here, just based off of everything that you covered. If costs between keeping the service as is and bringing it in-house, as you mentioned, Pam, I think were relatively the same. Were there any other financial or maybe non-financial elements that led to which way you went in this regard? Again, if I hear costs are relatively the same, I'd imagine there may be some other incentive to kind of determine and dictate which method you go with. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, and so I guess I should clarify too. So the initial startup costs would be more than outsourcing it. But over the modeling years, it would all smooth out with the loan for the startup costs. So why we are looking at the in-house seriously is due to the severe lack of customer service with the hauler industry. For 2 years, they repeatedly missed pickups, and we did have a clause in our contract that if they missed pickups, then we could bill them for X amount. And so, for example, the first quarter of this year, they were billed for a $90,000 penalty. And we're still looking at the second and third quarters to bill them for those as well. Now, service has picked up a wee bit there too. That's one reason why we're looking at it seriously. And the second reason is in today's world, the haulers don't want to pick up those bags. They want to use the tote system, and completely understandable because the trash and recycling business is like in the top 5 of worker comp issues. Because folks jumping on and off the trucks and so forth. So that really kind of elevates costs and, for anyone that's providing that service. That led us to looking in-house because that's something that as a local government, we're not meant to make a profit. We're not really meant to lose either. So it's a break even. So the cost of providing service could be done and meet our missions to provide those quality services for the resident at the same time, not needing to make a profit. So we could provide that with an in-house service. Anything else to add?
No, I think you touched on it, is the customer service aspect, giving the residents a service where their trash is picked up on the day it's scheduled to be picked up. That is enormous. And they're not getting it.
Do any sort of local regulation changes or green initiatives? I'm thinking, for example, Philadelphia had a bit of a bag ban, right, with plastic bags, switching over to paper bags and totes for grocery stores and things like that. Do any sort of regulation changes like that, or even green initiatives for other parts of the state that may be more heavily focused around recycling, play a part in your decision to rethink services at all?
I'm not sure that does. I will tell you that the because of the pay-as-you-throw program has been in operation here for decades, the residents do recycle quite a bit. In fact, I think we're one of the top recyclers, this municipality. So we do not need an initiative to get folks to recycle more and throw out less. That we have.
Okay, thank you. Were there any, I'll call it unexpected results from this analysis as you went through this process? Maybe it was unexpected cost savings or increased costs, changes to revenue. Any sort of aha moments that you learned as you went through this particular analysis?
I can start off. I would say that initially I thought bringing it in-house, it would just be cost prohibitive, that it wouldn't be quite doable. But in just kind of analyzing the different costs involved, and we did a lot of field trips to fellow municipalities who already collect their trash and recycling in-house. So just to get the experience, starting a business is for anyone, whether you're a municipality or an individual, it's still, there's many hurdles to overcome, and just making sure that we're taking a look at every little detail so it could go as smooth as possible. So that was my first inclination, was it seemed like maybe it wouldn't be doable, but once looking at the figures and so forth and kind of digging into the different aspects of what's needed, it seems doable.
Yeah, and because they have a pay-as-you-throw program on, and something we never considered, it's a successful program. But for so many years, a trash truck, there was a driver and somebody that would get out of the truck, pick up a bag and throw it into the back of the truck. The haulers do not want to have two people on the truck. So it was an aha moment, but it was a moment that we knew would come at some point. We need totes. Eventually, they will need totes and no more bags.
Aside from the costs being very similar between the two, which kind of leads to the conclusion, the assumption that it's more doable. I'm curious if a transition of bringing a service like this in-house has played a part at all in the township's ability to execute on maybe other items that are in the strategic plan, other initiatives. Has it changed your way of thinking and how you're addressing your strategic plan? Or is it more of like a standalone initiative?
It's standalone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say, I mean, just talking about that a little bit, trying to get the community ready for it. We worked with a company that had federal grants available because federal government's really focused on sustainability and environmentally friendly programs, at least now. So we were a recipient of recycling totes, probably a little over $300,000 program where we were able to roll out those totes to the community to try to get them in the mode of using the totes. And then also that was a way to effectively, cut our costs a little bit because we got half the totes out there to the majority of residents. So that'd be affected the program a wee bit.
Gotcha. I'm curious, did this process that you went through of kind of analyzing the outsourcing versus moving things in-house, did it change the way in which you collaborate and communicate financial results internally in any way? I know we have kind of a pretty tight-knit group in how you operate from a financial planning standpoint. I'm just curious if you found any changes to the process in doing this.
Good question. Not a whole lot of changes, but it did. I think the modeling tool did help us think through every aspect of the business, and just really taking a good solid look at it. And then actually it was a way to have a great visual tool instead of just, the spreadsheets and it's all in one location. I think our board and the residents who did attend the public meetings could visualize it a bit more too. And they can see the trend and where it was trending as well too.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess just as a follow-up and more for the rest of the folks in attendance here, just to get a sense of kind of West Whiteland's identity as far as financial planning is concerned. How many people do you typically involve in the financial modeling and planning process?
It's a tricky one.
Certainly the entire staff is involved internally. And then for external, it is whoever cares to pay to listen. That modeling goes out to everybody. Resident. So it's at every public meeting. The thing is, yes, how many people attend a public meeting? But it is available to every resident. The thought process, the planning process, every little nuance of this endeavor is available to the public.
Yeah, that was definitely going to be my follow-up question. Is there particular audiences that you present to, and in this case, it sounds like you distribute en masse to who all is wants to look at that information. So that's really good to see.
Might add, Michael, it was interesting because last year we increased our property taxes. And so we had a large group from the public that attended, right? So, and that's when we started the solid waste trash discussions too, and presented the different scenarios as well too. So I would say in attendance, there were more. They're not quite as concerned about that because folks tend to respond in the moment. So we expect probably a big turnout towards the end of next year regarding the increase.
Gotcha. I'm curious for others who maybe would be considering insourcing services like this, contracted services. Maybe it has to do with trash collection, but maybe just the general topic of insourcing contracted services in general. Do you have any advice for others that may be looking at this? Any maybe tips or tricks learned in going through this process, or areas to focus on when you're doing this sort of analysis?
Pulling in resources all around you. So our biggest assist in this review has been working with other municipalities that have brought it in-house. And then as well as working with our hauler, like what kind of expenses they have encountered and so forth. But it's really working with our counterparts and whoever has that same service, getting out there, seeing how they're operating, taking a look at their budget. We had to do, size comparisons, the number of residents on the system, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a couple different schools of thought where we have municipalities that don't have that public facility where they house the equipment inside. So they're replacing trucks more often. We have other municipalities that have the building and they're housing all their equipment under one roof. And they have a mechanic in-house. Some just outsource all of that too. So really just taking a look at all of those different situations and not discounting anything, but taking a look at all the facts, and because that's going to influence how the system or the business is set up.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And we did hear from from some of the other sessions that we had here, just trying to getting a sense of kind of the identity, West Whiteland's identity, and understanding maybe for those who aren't in the municipal space, the kind of big key drivers for you all. For example, in higher ed, it's your tuition, state funding, and in the water utility space that we saw earlier, it's rate revenues and property taxes. Could you highlight maybe some of the what I'll call consistent revenue drivers for the township, and then maybe which ones are on the more volatile side that you have to pay close attention to?
Sure. On the revenue side, I can address the general fund. The consistents is tax revenue. Real estate tax revenue is very consistent. There's a millage rate and there's an assessed value to the property. Chester County has not done a reassessment since 1998, using 1996 market costs. So that is a very predictable revenue stream. And the largest, which is not volatile per se, is the earned income tax that Pennsylvania has. In West Whiteland, it's 1% of a resident earned income. So it does fluctuate a bit, but not drastically. Those two revenue streams are the fundamental, basic revenue stream for the general fund.
Yeah.
Now, the solid waste endeavor, strictly by a separate fee to each resident who is in the program, raise enough revenue to cover every cost within that program. Pretty simple.
Yeah. And actually, you would have thought that, for example, the earned income tax, that we would have seen a drop over the pandemic, but we were one of the lucky municipalities that we did not stayed relatively flat.
This township just remains steady throughout economic downfalls. The 08 and 09 housing costs did not decrease, but they do get property realty transfer tax revenue. It remains relatively flat. The only general fund revenue source that is very volatile is development costs, permit fees, building permits, and whatnot. When development is booming, the township also booms in building permit fees from developers, namely from developers. When developers stop building, that revenue stream drops considerably.
I have one last question for you both here, and it really has to do just around efficiencies. Any I'll call it efficiencies or lessons learned as you went through this process using the Synario platform, maybe versus a more traditional or static way of doing this sort of analysis. Anything that you've learned on that front, or improvements that you found in the process?
Yeah, I would say getting the base information in there as far as salaries and healthcare and the various insurances was very helpful, because you're not inputting that and inputting it every time you're doing a spreadsheet. The links don't break, that's super practical in the weeds. I get it, but so that was super helpful, and then you can build off of that too.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate that. And it definitely, it sounds like you see the value here, as I'm sure, and I hope everyone else does on the line here. I mean, really what you're getting out there, Pam, is you're spending your time on the actual analysis, not on making the thing work, right?
Yep.
And we're big believers of that. When you're doing financial planning, when you're doing strategic modeling in that regard, you shouldn't be spending your time trying to figure out where all the linkages are and how the system works and validating. That's a necessary process. Hopefully it's a one-time process, right? Establish trust and confidence, and then move on and focus your time, on moving the needle, which it sounds like you all are doing here. Alrighty, wonderful. Well, thank you both very much. This is again, very informative and productive session. I think we learned a lot here. I guess I'll leave with maybe one last question for you both, which is, what does the future hold for the township?
Well, we are in a knee deep in many capital projects right now, finishing a public works facility. We just finished a new road that township's getting an award for on Thursday night. We're redoing some pump stations, and I would say many future capital projects too. Local government is a great place to be, just because you get to start the project, analyze the project, and then actually do the project.
Gotcha. Yeah, wonderful. Well, we're excited to continue working with you on that front and see how you can continue evolving over time. Thank you both very much for your session. Much appreciated. I think that brings us down towards the end of our session here. And so again, just big thank you for your insights and for all the expertise that you provided.
Thank you.